Hey, Curt.
Hey, howdy.
It's good to have you, Curt. Curtis E. Christman's in the building.
Yeah, wow. Amazing.
Yeah, well.
I was trying to think of ways to introduce you to the audience. Thought about the fun uncle of the family, and then the problem
that's a
is
good one.
that
That's a good one.
it seems like every uncle in the family has the fun uncle personality role.
Well, everybody wants it.
So it's a shared...
I'm the fun uncle for all of mine.
yeah, Brock's the next generation's fun uncle.
Exactly.
So it's a shared title, sorry. One of the fun uncles is here.
One of the fun. Choose your fun.
It's different kinds of fun.
It is different kinds of
There's
fun.
all kinds of fun.
Yeah.
You are a very good person to talk to because, number one, you have a great podcast voice. I don't know if you know this or not.
Okay.
You do.
I've been told before or asked before, have you ever done radio? Because your voice is, just good. So, but that is
true.
That is almost 30 years ago that was the last person told me that. So
You should read audiobooks.
yeah,
There you go.
I hate reading out loud.
Oh,
Like,
I hate reading anything.
I love to read. I love to read because, and part of why I don't like reading out loud is I just hit the tops of the waves.
Oh.
If it gets too boring with description, I'm going to conversation because that stuff doesn't matter to me. I've already have the picture,
Right.
so I want to know what you're thinking, what you're saying. So
That's interesting.
I can read a John Grissom book.
In 5 minutes.
Well, not quite 5 minutes, but when they come out, I try to go right away, pick one up, and usually in 3 days' time, I've lost about 6 hours of sleep, but I'm done with the book.
That's pretty impressive.
I
That's
just
like next level speed reading.
I don't know. It's an addiction actually.
Yeah.
Like I can't put it down, and so that's fine.
No, that's good.
There's worse addictions.
There are a lot.
Reading
worse
is so good
addictions.
for you. So.
I have some of those too.
Well, Nick's been working with addicts.
In addicts.
Okay. Oh, in addicts, like up in the roof. I got it.
Better him than me.
Did you, Nick, ever listen to Curt's episode on A Good Day podcast?
No, I never did, but
Wow.
I remember hearing something about how good your voice is for podcasting.
That's
I remember Brielle saying something like that.
It was fun. I like to talk, and I like to talk about myself. So
She said you were really nice to listen to.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. But no, I never did.
That
That.
soothing,
I'm not. Yeah.
that soothing, deep voice. You just got to kind of get down in that voice. Yeah.
Oh man, the guy on the internet, the homeless guy that got discovered. Have you ever seen him?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness! Take my voice and drop 2 octaves, and just smooth. Oh my goodness, smooth. And somebody heard him, and they were like, and he had been in radio before, but he had been through a lot of issues and stuff, and so, but it'd be interesting to look him up now and see if he, did he stick with it? Because his life changed. He got a job immediately, and yeah, he was good. He was just.
How many stories do you hear like that where somebody was undiscovered? Or how many people have there been that weren't discovered?
Yeah.
Who may have been
like
Elvis. We just don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and it's the day and age where it's a whole lot easier to be discovered because you've got, America's Got Talent, and every country now has their own version of that, and American Idol, all that stuff it's made a way, and that's why it's so popular because everybody's like, they got their thing, and they might think they're Hollywood, so
Yeah, and then they get the chance to test it out in front of.
Yep. But there's a lot of them out there, for sure.
I think that's right.
Well, that's what we're hoping for.
Nick, I thought maybe it'd be fun to have you kind of just lead this a little bit, just to see where you want to go with it. But thanks for coming. It's good to have you in studio.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know how we could possibly fit all the things that you would be nice to talk to about in one podcast, so I don't think we'll attempt to do that.
Everybody's a repeat guest.
Yeah.
There you go. Hey.
Yeah. I feel like maybe it's like this in a lot of areas, but I feel like so far I'm realizing how much like talent there is for podcast conversation in our area. Like we know a lot of people that they make great podcast guests. I don't know. Maybe it's just like that everywhere, but I feel like we just have a lot of people that are nice, would be nice to talk to.
Time that Lewis County is just full of hidden talent all over.
Yeah.
I mean, from singers to artists.
Right.
I mean, there's an artist in Lewis County that he's got his stuff other places too, but I mean, he's just phenomenal. I feel like one thing with the internet, you can get your stuff out there.
Right.
You're not stuck.
Market yourself.
Right. You're not stuck to your
We
location.
talked to that a little bit with Danny.
Yeah.
Because he was saying how, like with travel ball and different things, he goes, nowadays all the kids will put their content out and send a flash drive to coaches. And like when I was going through that,
Right.
not an option.
Yeah, it was CDs.
Yeah, I wasn't going to send a floppy disk.
It was
Well, when I was a kid, it was a carrier pigeon. So.
Yeah, right. Smoke signals.
so. Yeah, I don't know what I want to talk about first. I think I'd like to start with the part of your life that I've heard a little bit about, but don't know much about. So, why don't you just start with telling us like where you're from, where you were born, how you grew up, the family you grew up in, and your specific life situation / experience. You were, adopted, and yeah, just that whole interesting. Your childhood. I don't know much about it other than the few times we've talked about it. And so I think that's a great place to start.
We start with conception. We narrowed it down, and we believe that it's very close to either on the day or a few days on either side of my wife's birthday or her birthday. So I'm 9 months.
9 months,
almost
exactly.
to the day after she was born. So she felt like, God knew what I needed, and there it was. So.
Wait a second. After she was, I'm kind of dumb. Are you saying she's older than you?
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh yeah, older women.
Okay, sounds good. All right. So she
I went the other direction.
She was.
Yeah, well, those are nice too.
Yeah, well.
This is a brain twister. Oh, I'm so dumb. So your conception 9 months before. No, after
Delight was born.
She was born. Okay,
Yep.
I'm tracking.
Yep. Wait. Yes.
Right.
Bringing the room down with
She's
things.
born.
IQ levels.
Do the math. She was born in August 22nd of 1960, and I was born the following May 19th.
Ooh, it is close.
So yeah,
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
So I was adopted, and I'll start off with saying one thing about adoption. I've met a lot of people with their stories who they're not so great. And you hear a lot of those stories. And I think there's a lot of great stories out there. They just don't always get brought to the surface. Maybe we like tragedy more than triumph or something. I don't know what that is. But my adoption story is unlike a lot of people's. I grew up actually feeling privileged because that's kind of how my parents put it to me. We didn't have you, we chose you, kind of thing. And I literally, as a kid, thought, you people that are stuck with your biological parents you kind of got gypped.
Okay.
So I had this thing of feeling special, which was good because I also had enough garbage in school and bullying and all that stuff, so it kind of leveled out my self-esteem a little bit. But Carl and Lois Christman, my parents, and they were not able to have their own children, and they had already adopted a girl and a boy. And 11 years later, they got a phone call from a man who was a friend of theirs who was the head of a children's home. And a lady had come to him and said, I'm pregnant. I'm going to give this baby up for adoption. Please find a Christian home for my baby. And so he knew my parents, and my dad he's a Christian first, but he's also was a pastor, and they had already adopted. So that was the beginning of what I always knew. And so grew up loving family and good solid home. Grew up on a farm. They moved off the dairy farm, thank God, right about the time I was in kindergarten age, And so they had a beef farm, and so I didn't have to get up and milk cows and do all that stuff. But I mean, I did a lot of work on the farm, but not like you would if you were on a dairy farm. Very different thing.
You weren't sleep deprived all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, for anybody who doesn't know, dairy farmers are up at well before dawn.
Yep, exactly. So when I look back now at my life growing up, like, we lived very remote. It's still the same today. It's in southern Steuben County, right on the New York-Pennsylvania line. When I came to Lewis County, which is not a very highly populated area, I felt like there's people everywhere because it was one farm right after another. Like where I grew up, of course, it was hilly, but the farms were, you'd go a few miles between farms. So there's a lot more woods, obviously, than farmland. But it was very, I look at it now, it was very, what's the word, idyllic? However you would say it.
Idyllic.
There you go. I mean, I could ride my bicycle wherever, whenever. You didn't worry about traffic at all. And the few cars, literally less than 10 cars per day going by the house. And it's not much different today because it's the same people that live in that community and that did back then. I could go out and go woodchuck hunting by myself as a young kid and just, kind of like, Mayberry and Andy Griffin, walk off to the local pond and
no Starbucks on the corner.
There wasn't a Starbucks in anywheres at that stage of the game. But I, as a teen, preteen, and teens, I was always begging my parents, sell the farm, move to town. I want to be close to my friends. And Dad was like, not a chance. We're not, And I look back now, and it was good because my bent towards certain types of trouble would have been fed easily, and wouldn't have been good for me living in town. And so, yeah. And my best friend was my dog. And
What kind of dog was it?
The first dog, the dog that was always considered mine was a mutt. I remember as a kid looking out the kitchen window, and I saw this orange pup and a white pup about a quarter mile away coming down the road. Somebody had obviously dropped them off. That was a popular thing. Everything's very different now. Like in that day and age, if a dog got hit in the road, they'd have to be a pretty special dog before you went to the vet and spent money to get them fixed up. No, you would take them out back and dispose of them. And, it's just the way.
Yep.
Backwoods farm life. That's just the way it was done. So her name was Lady, and she was my buddy for a long time. We had other dogs too. My dad always had a big dog, Malamute and or not Malamute, Norwegian Elkhound crossed with a German Shepherd. They were big and.
An Elkhound.
Sounds like a massive dog.
Yeah, Norwegian Elkhound.
Oh,
whatever that means.
Okay. Very different from the Belfort Elkhound.
Oh,
like a
yeah.
big doggy.
But anyway, so life growing up was very free and I had to work on the farm some as I got older and that kind of thing, but it was good. I mean, I learned how to drive equipment very young. I was baling hay at first grade, second grade age.
Whoa.
Which don't picture a kid at that age out there with a tractor and a wagon and a baler by himself. It was Dad on the wagon, me on the tractor, and when we got to the end of the row, he would jump off, run up, put it in neutral, jump on the tractor, turn it around, head it back down the row, and say, "Keep that wheel beside the hay," And so that was kind of my. But you learned, and by the time I was a junior in high school, I had a job working for a farmer during the summer, and I drove his tractor and all that kind of stuff. So, the adoption story is really, that's the big part of my life, I think, in just how it all unfolded. And then as an adult, getting to meet first my biological mom, and then many years later, which was a surprise to be able to meet my biological father. Because when I met her, and that was through this guy that had placed me with my parents. He actually carried me out of the hospital, put me in their arms when I was 5 days old. And so right after we got married, I contacted him and said, hey, I'd like to find, my mother. Is it a closed adoption? How do you do that? What do you, and he said, well, I think I can find her for you. And like most adoptions in the States, they try to keep you in your geographic area. Like if you're adopted, your parents, your biological parents are probably less than an hour away from you.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I think I've recently heard stories about that.
Yeah.
I had a brother who lived an hour away and never knew.
Right. Yeah.
You'd think that's kind of close, but
yeah, it is. But you find out how. Like I meet new people all the time that are from Lewis County. I've been here almost 40 years. You'd think you'd seen 27,000 people. That's not that many people, but depends on the circle you run in. You know. And certain people at certain times in certain places, if you do the same activities over and over. But so anyway, I grew up within just about an hour and 10 minutes of my mom and my siblings. So there was 2 boys and 2 girls and me. I was I was the 4th born out of the 5, and I was the only one that was given up for adoption. I found that out after I met my mom. So when I met her, which would have been 1986, when our oldest daughter was born, so she was a newborn, and met her, got to know the family. I was never super close with them, although we did get together. We got together one Christmas down at their place, and for our baby dedication I think it was for Delight and Norma. My biological mother came, and my parents, Carl and Lois, were here. So my parents and her got to meet, which that's pretty special because that doesn't happen too often. It does some, but yeah. So that was kind of neat. And I have a picture with my 2 moms, and one thing I want to cut back to. So people will, when I tell my story, people will, if I don't remember to say it up front, people will ask, well, how did your parents feel about you finding going after your biological mom? And I talked to them ahead of time. I said, listen, I would like to find her, but you're my parents. And if it's an issue, it's for you, I'll just drop it. And I'd have just dropped it. And I probably would have waited until they were both gone. And by then she died before either one of them did. So anyway, but they were absolutely fine with it. And, so that was cool. It was an odd thing. We met at a McDonald's. She wanted to meet at a neutral place, and just kind of see, because you don't know. All these things go through your head, Are they rich? Are they poor? Are they givers? Are they takers? Are they, and all that stuff. And so you're just kind of wondering, like, you got this drive that wants to meet them, but at the same time you're like, what box am I opening up here? Yeah. So yeah, that was, and the weirdest thing about the whole thing is we went in, sat down, said hello, no hugs or anything like that. Shook hands, I think, maybe something like that. Her and I sat about this far apart across the table. And this desire in me, I wanted so bad to So we must not have shook hands to start with, because I wanted so bad. I was like, that's my flesh and bones. That's
your blood.
That's my blood. That's where I came from. I want so bad to touch her.
Oh, okay.
You know, and I'm a touchy feely guy anyway. That's, you know, part of how I show love and appreciation. So
Just like Nick.
but
Totally.
yeah,
I would have been thinking the whole time that I wanted a quarter pounder.
I wanted one too.
Okay, so you had that draw.
Yeah. It was
right.
just, it was an interesting moment. It was a very interesting moment. And, the guy that that hooked us up, then he was there for part of it. He said, I'll stay. And, you know, if I see that it goes well.
He facilitated that meeting?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. He did. So kind of a fun backstory or side story, I guess, to that would be the best way to say it. When I decided, okay, I'm going to go for this, I'm going to try and find her, see what it takes. And so when I called him and he said, yep, I'll help you find her. And he said to me at one point, because I would call him every month or so, and he was going through a lot of personal issues at that point in his life. So what literally probably took him less than 20 minutes took about a 3.5 year span, or 2.5 or 3.5, I don't remember now, but it was quite a long time. So he said to me at one time, because we were living in northern Pennsylvania, close to where I grew up, and we were caretakers at a Christian camp, and he said, there is a man that is your biological uncle who lives somewheres in the area where you are, and he's a retired mail carrier. So I'm looking every time I see a guy that might be the appropriate age. I'm looking, you know. Right. And so where we lived, we were about a mile from town. Mail didn't come till late in the day, so we would often drive down to the post office and to get our mail. And we would talk to Harold Martin, who was the postmaster. And one day I went in after, you know, found out that there's a retired mail carrier around that's my uncle, went in and said, Harold, you know, do you know of any retired mail carriers in the area? And he's like, no, he couldn't think of any. He said, none that I know of. And who he would know, he's the postmaster, right? It was him.
What?
It was him. We talked to him. I say we talked to him. Delight definitely talked to him almost every day, because she usually went for the mail. But I would, you know, quite often go also. And so it was him. I'm asking him, you know. And so fast forward a year or so, about probably closer to 2 years, we have met other people in the family. We found out who he was, you know. Wow, it was here we knew Harold. We talked to him.
Yeah.
And he found out who we were. He remembered us and all that. And unfortunately, he was killed in a car accident before we were ever able to actually meet him. Him, his wife, his mother-in-law, and his sister were all four killed. And drunk driver hit him. And then that was an interesting time too, because I went right down. And I attended his funeral. In the funeral line, I'm meeting his 2 kids that he has adopted. I knew them from youth group activities through church. You know, here we were cousins.
Yeah.
And
never knew.
So yeah, no way of knowing.
And this was your uncle on your mom's side?
Be my mom's side.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Did this all feel strange to you? All of a sudden discovering like everyone around you, almost like they were closer than you ever knew, and did it all kind of happen in a short period of time that you discovered all this? Yeah,
it was over a few years period, and also, so I would would have been my grandmother when she passed away, which I had met her once, and so we went down for that funeral, and I was being introduced to people my aunts and uncles, my sister would introduce me to them and say, Uncle so-and-so, this is Curt, Mom's son you never knew about. Okay. That was the moment he found out.
No way.
That there was a me. So it was awkward. There was a lot of awkward stuff.
Yeah.
They just didn't do the social stuff.
Yeah, well, yeah,
as good as they could have, which whatever.
But it's an awkward situation too.
The whole thing's
and
awkward.
The dynamics. Everybody has different dynamics.
Yeah,
it reminds me of when you were talking about telling your parents, hey, it's kind of up to you guys if you want to have this meeting, and because they have their own insecurities maybe or reservations about the issue. And, so we're going to lose feed in a second. Then we'll just reset the cameras and we'll keep going.
Okay,
just want to hear more. All right,
sounds good.
All right, we're back. We're just getting Curt's story a little bit, and we left off at the meeting with your biological mother and your adoption parents, and then, go just take it away.
Sure. So I was just telling the guys in the break, I was born 11 years before Roe v. Wade. I don't know which way it would have went. I don't know, and obviously, I'm here, and so we know what she did. She, as I got to know her a little bit over the years, she had scruples on one hand, and not so much maybe on the other, just in how she lived her life. I mean, she had 5 children. She had 4 different husbands, but she was always married when she got pregnant, which was important to her. I figured that out along the way, except for me. And that, I believe, that's part of the reason probably why I was put up for adoption, because she wasn't married. And she was also caring for 3 kids. And, the thing she said is, she said, I just didn't feel like I could take care of you. And I look at the whole thing from the big picture, the God picture, and it's like God went, this one is going to grow up over here. That's what I believe happened.
Okay, so I have a question about that. You said that you were the 4th, and then there was a 5th after you. Mm-hmm. Is that something that you struggled with at all? Or did you have to come to peace with that there was another after you that was, and you were the only one who was, put up for adoption? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I had a brief period of time where I refused to call her mom. And this was before I actually met her. I would say the lady that had me. And there was something in me that didn't, because she didn't mother me. After I met her, I realized, oh yes, she did. She it's funny. I'm feeling a little emotional, and it's not normally, it's not normal. When I tell this part of the story, I don't get emotional about it, but it's good. It's a good check for me. She did not want to give me up for adoption, but she felt like she had to. And in that day, they did not let the mother see the baby. And so she wasn't allowed to see me. She said, I snuck down to the nursery and got a good look at you. And remember when she said that, and I realized, okay, this was a woman that was going through a tough time and made a tough choice. And, it wasn't a light thing for her. It was a big struggle. And I did find out after she passed away, I talked to a close friend of hers who she would drive this lady they played bingo together. And this lady was legally blind, and so she would drive her. The lady's name was Gertie. So she would drive Gertie to bingo, and they would do bingo together. And on the way home, because I asked Gertie, I said, because I was trying to figure out at that point, who's my dad? Because I had gotten 2 different stories from her about that, and she didn't know who it was, and my conception, I had 2 different stories. So I asked Gertie, I said, did did she ever talk about me? And she said, yeah, she did. She said, we were driving home from bingo one day, and I could hear her start crying. She pulled off the road. And so she's like, my mom's name was Ruth. She said, Ruth, what's wrong? And she said, I did a terrible thing years ago, and it just bothers me. We're talking, because she would have passed away somewhere in my mid-40s.
Oh, wow.
So this is, around 45 years later, it's tearing her up from time to time. Enough that she pulls off the road crying about it. So she tells Gertie about the fact that she had this baby and gave him up for adoption, and talked about her regret. Gertie she would be gone now. I couldn't get any more information about it, but did enough at the time to satisfy my curiosity. But so there was, as I look back at the whole thing, there was a part of her that, on one hand, that's funny because there was a part of her that really cared, and yet when I asked her if she remembers my birthday, she never remembered what my birthday was. Mm-hmm. So that was a little bit
hard to decipher.
I was disappointed, I think, because I was thinking, she would have thought of me on that day, but it doesn't matter. It's not, obviously she she did care about me and made a good choice, definitely. So so the big question was that I never thought about in my pursuit of her was the pursuit of my father. I don't know why, just it was like I need to find who my mother is. Her first story, when I asked about him, she said, I don't know. She said, I was at a party, and when I went to leave, somebody grabbed me and drugged me out in the cornfield and raped me. So my understanding was I was a product of rape. Later on, the story that she told Gertie was different than that. And then there was an aunt that we got to know quite well. I mean, well enough. And there was a whole nother story that she had told the aunt. And so how it happened, I'm not sure. There's 3 different stories. I have my own theory about, how it happened. But at that stage, it was like, okay, well, there's nothing I can do about it because she doesn't know who the guy is. But God and DNA. So fast forward to Christmas of 2019, my son-in-law, Jordan, gave me a DNA test kit for Christmas.
What a good idea.
What a great idea.
That's a pretty thoughtful idea.
Yeah, to be the first one to maybe not the first one to think about it. Maybe others had thought about it, but jackpot gift. I was the one that thought about getting Curt's DNA test. Bragging rights.
Exactly. I love him anyway, but I love him more for for having done it. So what I didn't know was out in California, Gary Bavard, who was 80 or 81, from his second wife. His first wife had passed away, and he had 2 girls with his first wife, which means I have 2 half-sisters with him. So from his second marriage, he for Christmas, he received a DNA test kit. Same Christmas.
What?
Yeah. That's why I say, but God and DNA.
Whoa. Oh, okay, so the
nice
same exact
tie-in.
Christmas.
Same exact Christmas. Ancestry.com.
On the other side of the country.
And his was through Ancestry.com. I am not good at research and that kind of stuff. And I went, before I got my results back, I had started, figuring out, looking online at Ancestry, and a lot of it didn't make any sense to me. Figured out I was part Irish and part Scottish, and we all go back to Noah, so it doesn't matter.
We're all mutts.
That part wasn't ever important to me. But I did find a third cousin and reached out to him, and he was somewhere in Virginia, I think it was, but he didn't really know anything about, any of me or any of my, because there was nothing. He would have been on my father's side, and there was nothing to know because my father had no clue that he had gotten someone pregnant.
Okay.
So that adds up to some of the story.
Yes, because I was wondering about that. If
Right.
maybe it was
Right.
something that he was keeping.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. No,
he just didn't know.
Yep. No, he didn't know. His story. I'll clean it up and make it as brief as I can. He just said he was a young sailor on a ship, and that was just part of what you did.
What kind of ship? Like what?
He was on a, can't remember the name of it now. He was on a submarine tender. So apparently every submarine has a ship that feeds it, brings it supplies, mechanics, whatever, all that stuff. And so he worked on this submarine tender. His first job was quite a glamorous job. He was a soda jerk.
A soda jerk?
Yeah.
And what is that?
A soda jerk is the guy that when you come into the soda shop, he serves you your soda and your ice cream, root beer floats.
Like the It's a Wonderful Life when he's a kid, like the soda shop.
Exactly,
Okay.
exactly. That's what a soda shop was.
It's like they could just put him on their own boat.
Yeah. Job security.
Oh,
Okay. So
Anyway, another story I'm thinking of, but I'll get that when we get there. Anyway,
He wasn't aware.
he was not aware. So, and I only ever looked like at Ancestry online a couple times. Like because to me it didn't make sense, and I was interested, but I wasn't driven. So fast forward to March 1st, 2020. Pandemic has, in its first month of ramping up to being this thing, whatever it all was. My son-in-law Jordan, who had given me the kit for Christmas, he was in Pittsburgh getting surgery. So my wife and daughter were both there with him. I had been there for the weekend. I had traveled home. So I was a rare thing for me. I'm at home alone, getting ready to go to bed. I was exhausted from driving all day. And so 9 o'clock at night, I'm getting in bed, and I grabbed my phone. I was just going to look through Facebook quick. And I see a message to me, and, they got this tiny little picture. You can't tell who's, hardly, but I can tell it's some young girl, and she's a pretty young girl, and I'm thinking, what's she soliciting? And so I'm going to hit delete. Right. And I was like, I ought to at least read it. So I skimmed it. How I read, zoom, did not retain any of it, and I'm ready to hit delete, and all of a sudden I was like, wait a minute, what did I just read? And I should have pulled it out. I could read it to you, but it's basically, she introduced herself, and she said, my stepfather got a DNA test kit for Christmas, and he just got his results back, and don't know if you're looking for your father or not, but it says that you are 99% parent-child.
99%. That's pretty good.
And that was weighty, like, whew. And I'm sitting there, and I'm like, this could be it. This could, So I messaged her back, and his name is Gary, and I said, so where does Gary live? And, well, Gary lives in California. So I'm thinking, well, California and New York are a long ways apart.
Yep.
So I said, did Gary ever live anywhere before California. She said, I'm not sure. Let me check. So she's on the other end. She's messaging her mom, getting information. And what I don't know is Gary is in his 80s, got a little bit of dementia, and he's also he's heading to bed. He's tired, and so they're trying to get information out of him. So anyway,
yeah, right.
So she types back, yes, he lived in New York. I'm like, okay, well, I grew up in New York, but still a pretty big place. And I knew that I was conceived near Corning, New York. That much I knew from my mother. And so I said, okay, so where did he live in New York? She said, okay, well, let me check. And so she checks, and all of a sudden the message comes back, Corning, New York. I was like, done.
Yeah. How many more points of reference do you need before it's...
Yeah.
What did that feel like, that moment?
I don't get bent out of shape, or I don't get overwhelmed. I don't get flustered. That's probably a better way to say it. I was flustered. I was like, oh my goodness, this is it. This is him. This is, I found him. I thought it'd be harder.
Yeah. Well, it came right to you.
Yeah.
It came right to me.
Amazing.
Yeah, it came right to me. It was, God does that. He works things out in our behalf so many times. I was flustered enough. My son Corwin, who was on your podcast and your first guest, he lived 3 miles away, and I'm there by myself, and I'm flustered enough. I called him up. I said, Corwin, I think I just found my dad, and I need you to come over. And the only other time I called him at night and said, I need you to come over, it was when there was a bat in my bedroom.
Hey, he's good at those.
I covered my head, and I got my cell phone. I was like, Corwin, any chance you would come kill a bat? I don't know, I was just spooked. We were both spooked. It's like,
yeah.
So Corwin, who was a cop, right? So Corwin, he's like, ooh, he's into action, and he's like, he started to head out the door, he said, and thought, maybe I should go back and get my pistol. Who he doesn't understand what's going on, that it's all online, right? So he's right. Rushing over.
Like your dad showed up at the door.
Right, exactly. Or something, I don't know.
Every scenario.
Yeah. So anyway, Corwin came over, it was a great relief. I always appreciated that. It was just good for me. And so anyway, the rest of the story's long, and it's not necessary for all of this, but we basically got on the phone right away with my wife and daughter and son Christian and daughter August, and so made arrangements right away. Said, hey, can we call and talk? And they said, well, we'll try and, he's sleeping. I don't know if we'll be able to get him awake or not or whatever. But anyway, so we all together, we were all on connected and talking to his wife, and I was fine. At that point, I was like, search is over, and so I'm, if I talked to him the next day, it didn't matter to me. And within minutes, he was on the phone. And that was a bittersweet, because he had just enough dementia that he could talk about himself. And over time, when I would call him on the phone, it was same stories. And I would push, and each time I would get a little bit more information, but at the same time, you're trying to sift it all, because he's got dementia, and how much is, what's reality, what is he leaving out, all of that. So, we talked about getting together. He was concerned because of COVID. He wanted to be able to get the COVID shot, and so so this is March. It took us to the following year to actually get together with him, which was out in California. So I did get to talk to both of my sisters on the phone. That was really cool. One of the things that was different about this from meeting my mom, she was welcoming with reservation. He and my two half sisters there, they were welcoming with arms wide open and as quick as we can get together. And he's like, yeah, come on out. And we got an extra bedroom and love to have you come. And, and we'll, I can't remember what it was. It was something funny that he said, we'll watch TV together. So it's like,
yeah.
But he, obviously he wanted, you could tell he wanted relationship. So, it was pretty cool, going there. So, my wife and I went, and, the two half sisters met me at the airport, and it's what you see, if you go on YouTube and look at adoption reunions, it was that. It was all of that. It was, hugs and tears and it was just the neatest thing. And of course you're looking at them and,
do I look like that?
And,
right.
And so they're girls, they, if it had been brother, it probably would have been a little more resemblance, but it was neat. Just right away. It was just instant connection.
You look very much like him, right? Wasn't that the thing? Like, oh my gosh, it looks just like him.
I don't look in the mirror, so when I looked at him, I'm like, people think I look like him. Is that what I look like? Of course,
he's strong family resemblance.
He's he's in his 80s, and he's has trouble shaving and all of that, and that
that was my impression when I saw the photos, kind of side by side.
Yeah.
I was like, oh yeah.
Well,
I see it.
So the neat story, and this was really warmed my heart, and just the whole thing was. The younger sister's son, when he heard about it, and so my nephew, when he heard about it, he was like, "Mom, just be careful. You don't know this person, and you don't know motives, and and if it's even real, or just." He was just cautioning her because she was excited. Oh, wow, we have a brother. My dad was excited. He had always wanted a boy. And so the whole thing was just a lot of cool stuff like that. So when we went to my nephew's house, we had a meet and greet, whatever, and he told me later. He said, "I had reservations until you stepped out of the car." He said, "I took one look at you and that's Grandpa right there."
No kidding.
Oh yeah,
he could tell.
And the other one that was kind of neat was the older of the two half sisters, her and her husband came here, and we were going to go out meet. We were going to meet Benny and Luann and your parents at Olive Garden in Watertown.
Olive Garden, all and breadsticks.
Oh man, salad. And and my sister had made arrangements to come, but they were going to stay overnight in Watertown and then come and meet us the next day. And we were like, "We're going to be in Watertown going out for dinner. Have you had dinner yet?" "No, we're getting ready to go out to dinner." I said, "Meet us at Olive Garden." So this is after I had already met this sister, and this is some months later. So I hadn't met the brother-in-law yet. And he ended up sitting across the table from me, and we'd be talking along, and all of a sudden he would just start shaking his head, and she would say, "What, Kevin?" And he's like, "That is Gary all over." He's, just mannerisms, how.
Okay. Right.
Apparently that's in your DNA. It's not just, what you observed growing up. He's like, "Oh yeah," he said, that is so Gary. And it was like 5 times probably that he's like, "Oh my goodness, that is so Gary."
Wow.
So, cool.
Cool.
It was neat. It was neat. So
wow.
What was that? Okay. So finally finding your father, and your heart just must have been swelled 3 times big. Like, you look like him.
Yeah.
Some people are saying that that you remind them of him.
Yeah. That
must have been
Yeah.
insane to hear.
Yeah. It was really cool. The biggest thing I would have to say, the biggest thing of all of it was, so we met, and when his wife found out, okay, he's got 4 grandkids, my children, and he's got, at the time, 14 or 15 great-grandkids, and she was like, Gary, you're going to New York and meet your family. Now, he doesn't get around well. He needs help. And she did not want to bring him on a plane. She just thought that would be too many issues with that. So she rents an RV and puts this 81, 82-year-old guy in an RV, and she drives him across the country. And now, so this is 3 years ago. They get into New York. They're in Canandaigua, 2.5 hours from here, 2 hours, whatever. The same night that I had my motorcycle accident. Mm. And so we're like, Lord, this is not good timing.
Yeah, I have plans.
Yeah, we've got plans. We're in a hospital. So, again, COVID, still some stuff going on with that. She brought him to the hospital. This was in Syracuse, in upstate. Their protocol was you can have 1 visitor per day. They can stay between these hours and these hours, but not 1 visitor at a time. Like, my kids couldn't even come in and see me. My wife would come in and see me, and that was it. So he's at the hospital. He's downstairs. He's talking with he's meeting my kids, and he's talking to them. And so I talked to whoever was in charge, head nurse or charge nurse, whatever, and I said, hey, this is kind of an odd situation, and it's probably a once-in-a-lifetime thing. Right. So is there any chance he can switch out with my wife for half an hour and I can see him? And so they said, sure. So they my wife went down. The nurse brought him up in a wheelchair. He sat right close. We sat there. I held his hand, got to talk to him, and again, conversation like that it's not super because it's, he's on one track basically. But so this is early in the week. It was on a Sunday when I had my accident. This would have been, I think, Tuesday or Wednesday. I think it was Wednesday. Oh, okay. He had a cousin down in Corning that he was intending to go visit. So they went while I was finishing out my hospital stay. I came home Saturday afternoon, and they came back up. They stayed at Augie's house overnight in her driveway. She got to serve them dinner, which she loves, hospitality. And so that was a big thrill for her to get, this is her biological grandpa. She gets to, treat him to spaghetti, which was one of his favorite meals, which is one of my favorite meals.
Get out.
Interesting. Oh yeah. Yeah. A lot of times if we don't have anything on, I'm like, I can have spaghetti on the table in 20 minutes with meat sauce.
Oh, so. Wrong answer.
Wrong.
Spaghetti and meatballs. Come on.
Oh,
meat
that
sauce
takes time. It takes time.
That's right. Cool.
So anyway, I was setting this part of the story up. I'm a father of 4 children. And one of the mothers get a lot of accolades of, the role that they play and all the things they do and all that. And to take nothing away from mothers at all. It takes a mother and a father for the most ideal situation, right? Mm-hmm. But there is something about a father and his, like, your mom always thinks you're wonderful.
Yeah.
But when your dad puts his hand on your shoulder and looks you in the eye and says, I'm proud of you, that'll reduce grown men to tears. There's a power in that. It's not the same as your mom. It's not the same. So there's this thing that is called the father's blessing.
Yep.
And it's huge, and it comes many different ways. My father, Carl, that I grew up with, he never said, "I'm proud of you," but I would hear it from other friends that, because he wouldn't want you to get a big head, so he's not going to tell you he's proud of you. But I knew he loved me. I knew he cared about me. I knew, so what I had from him met my needs. But there's this thing, and I hope there's some guys listening that need to hear this. There's this thing as young men, if we didn't have it, we need it. And we're looking for that I know that my father approves of me and blesses me. And like I said, I'd never gotten it from Carl, although I knew it was there, and so appreciated that, and I could live with that. In this trip for my biological father, he's there, and he's watching. And our house is like 25 people in and out all day long the first few days, just grandkids crawling all over me. And it's, they're all worried about me at the hospital that I'm going to go home and not be cared for and not get proper rest and all this. I'm like, what I've got at home is what I need for healing. I knew that, right? Grandkids and all of that, friends and, extended family. So anyway, my dad, he's watching all this stuff. He's sitting there, he's in a wheelchair, he's sitting there, he's watching me interact with all these people and all of that. So it's Wednesday evening. He's going to go to bed. They're going to leave early in the morning, and they have their camper. So they're going to go out, get in their camper, and then they'll be gone in the morning when we get up. So when he's getting ready to go, he calls me over, and he I'm getting emotional on it now. But he said the blessing words. He said, "You've done so well, and I'm proud of you." And I guess what I want to say to people is, dads, if you haven't done that, your kids need it. They don't just need it when they're little. They need it when they're grown, especially your sons. They need to know that. And besides my marriage and my relationship with my children, grandchildren, and all of that, that is one of the precious things that I have. That it's not on a plaque on a wall; it's on the wall of my heart. And if you would have asked me, I would have said, I'm fine, and I was fine. But I got a trophy I didn't expect. And, if you're striving for a trophy and you get it, it's good, it's great. But a trophy you don't expect has a value to it that is just, I don't know, it's huge. It's absolutely huge. So, my father passed away last fall. I got to go to his burial. He had been in the military, so it was a military service. I've got some spent shells because they, do the 21 gun salute. And, it was very special. It was a very special time, and I got to connect again with nephew and niece and my sisters, and yeah, it was a neat time. But yeah, the treasure, I feel for my adoption story, it's complete. It's complete. I came out of that privilege, and I feel bad for those that because there's a lot of not so good adoption stories. Like we started with this. That's not mine. Mine it's a good story. It's a wonderful story, and I feel spoiled, and I'll take it. I'll take it because it's just so special. And I just really appreciate that, just the way God led that part of my life. And, could there have been more? Sure. I wish I could have met him even 5 years prior, so that we could have had some give and take. Like he never asked about my life. I actually said to him one time, I said, is there anything you'd like to know? And he might have asked one question kind of, and then it, again, with his dementia, it was kind of a one track.
Yeah.
And, he would answer different questions that I would ask as best he could. So, but I feel very privileged, what I got out of all that. And I'm also now privileged to be a grandpa of 4 children that are adopted. And that's I love all my grandchildren, and, you just do, all your children. You love them. Each one is their own, unique story and unique personality. But there is a special bond there,
Sure.
for that I have. It's like, yep, these kids I told them from the time they were little, I'd look at them, I'd say, you don't know it yet, but you won the jackpot. You won the jackpot. You are in a family that is going to just do you well, and so it's just neat. It's just neat to see that, and
Yeah.
very
Thanks.
special.
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah.
That's heavy stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah. And,
Yeah.
and important for people to hear for
yeah,
sure.
yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming on, Curt. We'll have to have you back because there is so much more that you have to offer.
Yeah, that's one little,
just one little snippet.
one little part.
No,
Big snippet.
Yeah.
I feel like there's so many avenues that we could talk to you about different things. And I think before we get you going, because we have, I have one of the cameras still going. The other one's kind of conked out on me. But, and if you hear rumbling and screaming in the background, it's just kids.
Yep.
Get used to it.
Get used to it.
It's the joy of life.
That's right. One thing I would like just to finish up on before we say goodbye, maybe 5 minutes if you can, just what you would say to somebody who's going through that dilemma right now, as far as adoption versus other avenues. I think that you'd be a good person to kind of speak to, an advocacy in one way or the other. So
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah. Sadly, we live in a day where abortion is not just available; it's promoted, and it's political. Shouldn't even be anywhere in the political mind. Abortion wasn't an option for my mother. And so, obviously you've heard the story, but the thing is, if you don't understand the truth, and you think that is that thing that we call a fetus, which I haven't researched it myself, but somebody was saying fetus means
Offspring.
right?
Yeah. I think that's the Latin for it.
So, duh.
Yeah.
It's talking about a life. Mm-hmm. What do? We do an ultrasound. Why? Because we want to hear the heartbeat. When your heart's beating, you're alive. When your heart's not beating anymore, you're dead. I mean, just do the simple thing. So, yes, being able to be on the side now of watching your parents adopt, our oldest daughter adopt, and all that you go through with all of that, and that baby inside, call it a fetus, call it what you want, it is a living being, and it needs a chance. I got my chance. I got to be raised in a good home, and grew up with a wonderful life, and supporting, loving community, all of that. And, speaking as somebody who is, trying to decide, what do we do? The thing that I see, and this is not to put anybody to shame, it's just a reality, is the most unselfish thing that my mother could have done was carried me. It was a time where it was shameful for her to be pregnant and not have a husband. So she went through all of that, moved out of her area. So I ended up being born in Pennsylvania instead of New York. She moved to Pennsylvania. She went through all that she went through in that 9 months. Why? Well, because she wasn't selfish. She was thinking about me and making sure that I was given life. And, as to the best of her ability, she found a place that would give me, to somebody that would give me, a good life. And, I look back and realize that I had the richest life possible. And knowing the other thing is, and I've often thought about this, knowing my own propensities towards certain sins. If I would have grown up in a home where there was not discipline, a home where there was not love and care, and that was unstable, I'd have been in jail. 100%.
It's an interesting way to think about it.
100%. I know that I would. I know the stuff that I've, had to deal with inside of me, yeah. And it's, one of the things was I grew up with anger issues, and I don't know why. Because I had everything going for me. But it was one area of my life that I did not know how to control, did not know how to deal with it. If I would have grown up in a home where there wasn't discipline, there wasn't all of that, where would that have taken me? Not a good road. Not a good road.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
But yeah, so it was a merciful God that got me where I needed to be, and yeah.
Yeah. One thing that I like to think about too is that just from the church perspective, or the Christian perspective, is our need and pull to wrap around those mothers and really encourage them and be there for them and offer any support that we can. It's a challenge to the church, because I think in a lot of ways the church could get better at that.
Oh yeah.
But also understand circumstances can be hard. And it's like you just got done saying, the most unselfish thing you can do is to sacrifice and to be in pain and to carry out that process so that they have a chance.
Yeah, absolutely. And the reality of that is, in the big scheme of your life, it's 9 months. It's 9 months to carry that life and give that baby life and give them a chance. And, I mean, listening to people who have had abortions and the emotional pain and all of that they go through, obviously my mother went through some of that because she wasn't confident that she did the right thing. And that's always perplexed me, even after she saw me and realized how wonderful of a life I had, something in her felt guilty for what she did, so, but yeah, it can be a lot of emotions on both sides, but to end a life is costly to you. When you are the one making that choice, it's a costly thing. And not that you can't overcome it, because I know people who have, they've experienced the inner healing and all of that they needed. So it can happen for sure. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, powerful stuff. And like Nick said, we are thankful that you were able to come in. And we're definitely going to have you on again. Folks, for those of you who don't know, Curt has a lot of wisdom to give in a lot of different ways. Family, faith, parenting, marriage. So we're going to be picking your brain more in the future. Right, Nick?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Anything else, Nick?
I want to talk about, I would love to come back and talk to entrepreneurs.
Yes.
Young entrepreneurs that are like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yes, because Curt is also a businessman and an entrepreneur.
I jumped off the cliff, and that's the answer.
The answer is just to jump.
That's a good topic.
All right, Nick. Why don't you send us out?
Appreciate it. That'll do her.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Thanks,
See you
Nick.
next time.
See you next time, everybody.
All right.